Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to our first episode of Leading Our Planet into Health. My name's Nathan Ryu, and in today's episode, Campbell Carew and myself are talking about why we felt inspired to create a leadership training business called Synthesis Academy and contribute towards the evolving nature of how leadership is conducted on our planet. Please note that this is our first episode, so if the audio and the video is not up to scratch, please excuse us. We'll improve the time. So sit back. We hope you get a lot of valuable content that's going to benefit you and your life, and we hope you enjoy this.
No, well, it was a really great question that we decided to ask ourselves of actually going, why are we doing all of this? What's drawn us to it? And so, yeah, I think it's a really good exercise to just share this a bit. So, really for me, if I look back earlier in this life, I'm a child of the 80s. I'm a child of the era of Gordon Gekko. Was greed works, greed is good type thing. And so I suppose, in that sort of thing, in the development side of me, it was really the time of, I wouldn't even say the birth of capitalism. It was probably the explosion of capitalism that really started to kick in at that part. So, there was a lot of this explosion of things like that. And I remember then having one, it's amazing the sorts of things that stick in your mind. I remember vividly one of my really early economics classes at uni. And the professors there talking about, the foundations of the Western economic system as being one that's based on self-interest, and the whole concept that if the individual is focused on his own self, and at that point it was just meant to be himself and his family and his community. If he was looking at that personally and those sorts of things, that would motivate him to participate and to be involved and actually look for his own growth and development that way. So it was really in that context, but I could hear the conversation going in the lines of self-interest, self-interest, self-interest. And even at that point, it just didn't sit well with me, of going, there's something that's just not quite there with that. And so there were these sorts of things that were going on, and so there was this birth of the 80s with this explosion of capitalism and greed is good. And then there was these things coming into me saying, from an economics perspective, it's all about self-interest. So you can see there's a bit of a theme in there. And then I look back into some other areas around that time is that, even a little bit earlier, of my experiences of team and what it's like to be in a team. And they were really in sporting pursuits. And I actually look back now and I go, man, I was spoilt with experience back then, because I had a couple of really wonderful experiences where we all came together as a team and we started to play for something that was beyond ourselves, and we could anticipate each other's moves, and we were having fun, and we were going out there and doing our best. And, we won a few trophies along the way, to go with it. And there was just this real thing of, oh man, this is what team's all about. This is magnificent. And so, naturally then, as I transitioned into the workforce and, it started into business, I naively had this thing about going, oh man, this is going to be that team's experience I had, but on steroids. It's going to be, it's going to blow me away. This is going to be amazing. Yeah. And I remember then sitting there about 20 years later going, oh, I wonder if I'm ever going to experience it. And it was really different because, once I get into the business, it was then all about, it was back into the greed and self-interest thing. And so while you always come across a whole range of different people and different motivations and things like that, by and large, the experience was in a team setting. It was a lot of self-interest. It was, I'll work with the team as long as it doesn't conflict with what I'm looking for myself. And if I need to get into a choice, well, I'll flip the team priority and I'll just stick with myself. If that meant climbing up over the top of someone to get a better pay rise or a better job or a better, whatever it was. So I have to say I felt myself really, really disillusioned with a lot of that, and asked myself lots of questions. And naturally, as you go through these sorts of things, it was moving from individual contributor into team leader, then from team leader into manager, and then eventually from manager into manager of managers, and running, pretty large collectives. And I looked at all of that through there, and it's the same sort of thing. Not only was I seeing some of that, play out in the teams that I was leading, as I was actually seeing it playing out in the different management teams that I was in. And it was one of those things that was, it was really challenging. And the other thing that goes in with that was this compression of time. When I first started in the business world, it was annual budgets. So we actually measured things, throughout 12 months, which was fine. And then, of course, it kept going with that. And it went from annual budgets to quarterly. And then it was like, and so you could just feel the time focus come in, and then from quarterly almost like to now. And that was one of those other things that just sat with me and just went, something just doesn't feel right with all of this. I might be completely wrong and I might be completely off the charts here, but there's something that just doesn't fit right with this, because what I would notice is that we would always prioritize the now. And that's great, and through a lot of the stuff that we'll do in the academy, we talk a lot about presence and, being in the present and being in the here and now and those sorts of things. So being present is one thing, but taking the benefits now and sacrificing the future is something that really seems to have, have gone off like a bushfire.
Yeah.
And I mean, I see that now, and like how we as a global community discuss the whole climate change thing. As we talk about climate change, it's like, yeah, well, absolutely, we should be changing. We should be doing all these things differently and all that. But when it comes to, listen, that might create a little bit of discomfort now. It's like, oh, geez, I'm really not so sure about that. Let's do what we can for the climate and the planet, but let's not discomfort ourselves too much along the way. And so there's a bit of that comes into it. And of course, a lot of this gets sparked then once I went to uni again to study leadership a bit more. I actually went in there with this collective experience of actually going, man, this whole self-interest thing and climbing up over everybody for, it's surely that can't be all there is to it. This whole time compression thing of just focused on now and sacrificing anything in the future for now, surely that can't be all there is to it. And then the focus of the team leading and those sorts of things. And of course, then the experience of team is that surely there's got to be, some team in here, because, certainly all of the environments I probably was in, everybody would have used the language of team. They would have used the focus of we're one team.
Yeah.
There's no I in team, and all of that. And I suppose this is where we come to challenges in life, isn't it? When that doesn't actually match what's done, or the behaviors that come with it. So, I actually hit that education thing actually going, something's not right here. And so, if anything, the whole experience of studying leadership then actually ignited this thing that actually went, oh, actually, there is a focus of this. There are options for this, and it's just maybe I haven't been in them. Maybe I haven't been in the environments where this is actually going to suit, and that really started to help. But I walked out of there with the fundamental thing saying, leader is culture champion. That's the sort of focus of leadership that it feels to me like needs to be nurtured and the like. So, that sort of thing was really prominent in the leadership thing. And then, of course, we've both, had this going at the same time, as you're having these sorts of experience, but also we're having our own personal transformation experience that's going on, which feels, which just feels a part of the journey. Is the more of these sorts of questions that come out about what are the values and what are the priorities, and that sinking feeling that actually goes, I'm not sure what it is, but I know it's not this. I know I'm missing something. And so more of that introspection that started to kick in. And of course, one of the early pieces of work that really leapt out to me was the work by Stephen Covey on his 7 habits. And that material actually spoke to me so loudly that probably still today I could quote you all of the 7 habits, and I could talk to you about it. It's those sorts of things. It started to become really huge. And I mean, what that started to open up was just actually going, hey, Cam, do you realize that there may actually be more than just you? There may be something bigger than just this human experience. And so naturally that got onto the whole personal transformation thing. And then the challenge of actually going, well, hang on, it feels to me like there's more than me. And of course, the first challenge that is actually going, well, I'm actually a part of, all of the humans that are on the planet. We're actually all one. And when I start to feel that, it's, well, actually, when you look at the whole planet that we're on, it's like, oh my God, we need to be interacting with her. And then you start going, oh, there's all of the minerals on the planet. There's all of the plants on the planet. There's all of the animals on the planet. And it's like, the thing that I found that was missing out of that, if you go back to that Gordon Gecko area and the greed is good and self-interest type thing, the self-interest type thing for me was actually going, deny what we are, deny that we're a part of everything, and that we influence all other aspects of the planet just as much as they influence us. And it's like, as soon as some of that sort of stuff started to land, then it was like, oh, now I get why there's been some of this discontent, because this awareness and this understanding has just been so absent from life. And of course, what starts to evolve then is you start to go, yeah, actually, and you know what, there feels to be different parts of me as well. There are more eternal parts of me that are here, as well as the ones that are in this human being. And you start to play around with the whole feeling of soul and spirit and all of those sorts of things. And I'd just summarize that now by actually saying that, throughout that whole journey, I've actually become what I would consider is quite spiritual in my outlook. It's actually a part of the way I live, and it's a part of the philosophy that I have. Something very different, naturally, as we speak about often, is very different to religiosity. And that could be the subject of a whole number of other videos if everybody's looking at that. But it's more about actually going, all right, so there is more to me than this. There is a greater awareness in here, and it feels connected. And I suppose, that's now being able to sit here and look back at some of these missing parts that I was feeling, earlier on in this life. It's like, I get it. I get it, why some of those sorts of things were speaking to me and going, nah, that's maybe not it. And so, maybe that's not it as well. And then as I've gone on, I've started to find different pieces of the jigsaw puzzle and started to put them together. And, that's now influenced where we're coming to now from this this perspective of leadership, and where do we want to be involved in it, and what sort of style of leadership and what focus do we want to have. And it's been really nice to land on the term eternal. And it's like, yeah, actually, we're not looking at the temporal, we're not looking at time bound. We're actually looking at, wow, what if we focused on leadership from its eternal perspectives? What if we focused on something that was beyond even the bounds of the length of this human life, however long it's going to be, and go, oh, well, maybe there's way more to it than that. And that's something that felt really inspiring. And of course, then the challenge comes of going, oh, wow, if we're starting to look at, eternally at leadership, what are the principles and the values of leadership that are actually more eternal in nature? And that's where we've managed to discern these eternal principles of leadership that we're now feeding in to this, this whole academy thing. And again, it's starting to fill some of those gaps. And the last part of that, so, if we're looking at leadership development, more on the eternal side of things, looking at the eternal principles of leadership and actually focusing on us in perspective of the planet, all of the kingdoms on the planet. There was one other piece that was missing for me, and it was like walking out of graduate school. One of the things I just loved about studying leadership was going and looking at all of the research and what everybody was doing and all of the different theories and the perspectives of what was going on. But one of the things I walked out of there with was a broader perspective, more of an understanding of what, but not much of a feel on how. All right, so now I've got all of this. How the hell do we do it? And so as we start to come into here with what we're doing with the Synthesis Academy is it's not just the why and the what and the how, it's also the help. And so it starts to become really important that we work with everybody to figure out the leader that they need to be, the leader that they want to be, allow them to grow with that, but also help. And help sometimes just by walking alongside, help by being engaged in conversations, help by discussing all of these different topics, maybe help by facilitating some coaching, some mentoring, whatever, but to add that aspect of help in there. And so we don't just sit there and we go, oh, well, I want to be the transformational leader. Great. How are you going to do that? I don't know. So that aspect of really coming into it is important. It feels like a really important aspect of what we're doing. So I don't know, that's a bit of a journey through this life. Man, there's lots I've left out. Lots of loves and losses and births and deaths and experiences, that all come along to to just change the flight path every now and then. but
Yeah.
Each of them really rich.
Yeah.
In what they're doing. So it's it starts to become a big journey. So I don't know. That's probably what what resounded most with me when I gave myself that challenge of going, how do you even come to this, eternal leadership thing and a leadership academy? So yeah.
Yeah, love it. One thing that sort of really popped out to me just now in our conversation, as we've sort of talked about, we feel this real resonance with the word eternal, and
Yeah.
Eternal leadership, and also the eternal principles of leadership, and I can really feel that, at heart level, and it really, really rings loud, and but at a mental logic level, the wording eternal principles of leadership just made complete sense to me.
Yeah.
No problem. My mind can figure that one out. But my mind has, kind of been struggling a bit with, well, what does eternal leadership mean? Like, what does that mean to me as a, facilitator? What would that mean to our students? But I kind of got it, in a very basic, different way just now as you're sharing.
Lovely.
So, one of the simplicity of what I've just got is, by taking on and becoming the leader, through these 9 principles and these 9 eternal principles of leadership,
Yeah.
and becoming this new way of leading, even at the end of our lifetime, we're going to be leaving behind a legacy,
Yeah.
which becomes part of the eternal effect upon, our immediate environment or community or the world or the nation or whatever, where I happen to be engaged in. And so thanks for that. That's
Yeah.
really,
Nice.
that's helped me to
Yeah.
feel a bit more into that.
I reckon, the other thing that when I was sat and reflected on it is that it's really important for us not to ignore those those little stirrings in life.
Yeah.
As we go through it, we get to points where we do experience things, and actually sometimes it can be really gentle. Sometimes it can just be I don't know about this. You know, sometimes it just shouts and screams at us and says, absolutely, there is something fundamentally wrong and we need to do something different. But
Yeah.
sometimes it just comes out and it goes, you know what, something's not right. And I
Yeah.
reckon the more that we can listen to that, and even not so much be worried about necessarily doing anything with it, but just allowing it to settle in and actually go, yeah, I can feel that. I'm not quite sure what that is, what it looks like, or what it means on the ground, but I can feel it. And so let me
Yeah.
let me keep that. It's almost like, let me just keep that and let that bubble away. And at some point, either 20 minutes or 20 years later, then something else will come in and go, oh, bang, actually turn left now. So yeah.
Yeah. Fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah, it's good exercise, isn't it?
Yeah.
So share with me your journey. What do you want to share?
Gosh. Well, yeah, like you said, there's a lot that can be shared, but I don't know, the things that sort of come to mind at the moment are, well, really, I just feel that we can do better, as humanity can do better. Like you and I were talking about, I think it was last week. You turn on the TV or the radio or YouTube or any outlet of social media or anything, and there's just so much doom and gloom out there. And that's not to disrespect all the amazing work that is being done out in our communities and across the country and across the
Yeah.
world. Of course, absolutely, there's some wonderful, wonderful, wonderful signs and expressions of real, genuine leadership, which is going to be helpful for the planet going forward. Absolutely, but um, when the news, the constant news, year after year after year,
Yeah.
is really unhealthy. For me, that's a real sign that something isn't on track, or there's a whole bunch of things that aren't on track with the plan of the health and well-being of the planet and humanity, and as you said, the animal, plant and mineral kingdom, all the kingdoms, all working together as one. So that's a big screaming thing, not just for me, but I'm sure for a lot of people. But previously, earlier on in life, gosh, remember those World Vision ads as a child?
Yeah.
You know, I remember seeing those World Vision ads. I couldn't stand watching them, in all honesty, because they were so confronting for me as a 5, 6, 7 year old, seeing these malnutrition, no water, no food, starving children, and disease and the whole thing. But at that time, I believed that, okay, great. There are these organizations such as World Vision and others, you know,
Yeah.
coming together to solve this problem. They're raising money and they're going to do something about it. As a 5, 6, 7 year old, that's what I could understand, and that's all I could see. But then, rolling forward 10 years, 15, 16, 17, and still seeing the same ads, maybe just a different child and a different speaker or something.
Yeah.
So hang on, and I developed enough within myself to start to question, well, what's going on here? Like, sure, they were talking about this 10 years ago. Why isn't this solved yet? Why isn't this solved?
Yeah.
We've got plenty of food, living here in Australia. Why haven't they got enough food? There's all these people that are trying to work towards it. And I could understand that as a big problem. But again, that was a real milestone, a real pivoting point for me in my life to say there's something that's not healthy happening on this planet. And then a few years sort of rolled around, and I started to become much more active in my in my inquiry into life. Like, what's this whole life thing about? And just even here in Australia, there was a whole bunch of things that I could see that were really unhealthy, such as crime rates, such as addiction rates, such as homeless, such as all these many different factors, disease, and all the lower spectrum stuff on the health and well-being scale. Healthy's up here, all the unhealthy stuff that's happening in society. Why is all of this happening? Even in a country like Australia, why is it happening? And then I started to travel a bit more, and it's amazing opportunity just to talk to the general person when you get to travel. Talking to
Yeah.
the person on the bus or the plane,
Yeah.
or at the cafe, or a homeless person,
Yeah.
or someone that you just bump into, at wherever you're staying, wherever. And while the language and the circumstances of how it played out, were relevant to each of those countries, that the foundation of them and the problems that were occurring were the same here in Australia, here in every other country. It was exactly the same. And I was so fascinated by this. It wasn't, a kind of, super realization that just happened after talking to one or two people. This is over a whole range of years. And then just, it kind of just hit me after a while of, wow, gosh, I'm seeing a pattern here of, people struggling with the same sorts of things, and countries struggling with the same type of problems, and I found that so very fascinating. I found it very interesting, and so then I started to become really interested. Well, what's all this about? What's the solution here? And I had a real interest in psychology and the human experience at that particular time. And again, I was still fortunate enough to be able to travel a lot at that time, and engaging a lot with a lot of different types of people. And what I started to see is that there was a similar thing in pretty much most conversations, that people were looking for something.
Yeah.
They were looking for something.
Not quite sure what it was, but yes.
I was looking for something. And I didn't know what. It's like,
Yeah.
what are we looking for? What are we looking for? And fundamentally, I just felt that we're all looking for something, and at times I felt that we're looking for different things because we're all unique and different and so forth. And but then there are other times where I felt, actually, I feel as if we're looking for the same thing, whatever that happens to be. And then, there's so much rhetoric out there around, being happy, trying to live, be happy in life. And I really get that. Like, I get it, I get that people want to be happy. But we tend to go looking into some pretty weird places to try to find happiness.
Yeah.
Getting the latest thing, latest phone or TV or something, and of course that's not it. It's only ever a band-aid effect of we got something new or shiny in our life, and
Yeah.
we experience some sort of level of subjective happiness around, over a short period of time of experiencing that new thing in our life until we then it doesn't become new or shiny, and we start to look for something else to replace that. And that just didn't make sense. Even though that I've done a lot of that, I've done an enormous amount of that myself, and found myself going, you know what, this isn't actually filling this thing that I'm looking for. So then I dug deeper. I was like, okay, well, what's going on here within me? What's going on within other people? And I started to study a bit more about self-esteem.
Yeah.
And that was so very fascinating. It was so very, very fascinating to see that humanity, and I'm grossly generalizing here. Some people have developed wonderful, healthy, mature self-esteem. However, what I found as a gross generalization is that the average person hasn't. There's, traveling the world, talking to lots of people, there were holes and gaps of unhealthiness within most people's self-esteem, of how they thought and felt about themselves, which, of course, is then how they think and feel about their world and their life and so forth. And found it so fascinating. I found it so very, very fascinating. So then I started talking to everyone about self-esteem, and it was great. I had so much validation of, well, like, how do you think and feel about yourself, and how do you think and feel about that, and that was wonderful. And it led me back to seeing, well, why do we have, again, a generalization in humanity, not just here in Australia, but across the planet. Why do we have these gaps in our self-esteem? That's not right. We should all have healthy self-esteems. And then, of course, it led me back to some fundamental things that we all experiencing. We were born, we have, these parents, and then we enter into the school system, and then we have these social lives, and we upbringing and so forth. And so I found that there are some gaps within, again, I'm generalizing, within how the average person is parented, in what we're taught and how we're taught at school, and school, as a huge part of our upbringing, upgrowing. And what I come to feel is that our schooling system, wouldn't it be wonderful if they could help us to all develop really healthy and mature self-esteem? So by the time we left school, we engage with society and with the world with having a reasonable sense of who and what I am, and also feeling comfortable and accepting, and even, dare I say it, self-loving, to the point where I feel comfortable to be able to go out into the world and take steps and know that I don't know everything, actually know that I don't know a real lot at all, but take steps in a healthy way towards whatever I'm feeling guided to go towards. and give it a go and just continue that learning journey. And I feel that would be a wonderful, wonderful way to engage with the world once we left school. And so anyway, there's a lot in there that I've just shared, but fundamentally, sort of like unravel back to, so well, like, why isn't our schools doing that, and why aren't we as parents? When I had my first child in particular, 6 weeks afterwards, I was like, how do you do this?
Yeah.
And I'm still trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
It's a massive experiment. And I just feel as if leadership in our local communities and in our states and nations and across the world, if there was a bit more of a conscientious focus on the well-being of all, making decisions, what is actually the best decisions for all concerned, not just what are the best decisions for me, what are the best decisions for my family or for my company or for more localized stuff. And I understand, like you were sharing it, I get why people come to those decisions.
Yeah.
But I feel that fundamentally, when we're constantly thinking and planning for our own safety and security and comfort, that we then forget about the well-being of everything that we're all a part of, that we're all connected to, which then, of course, affects our communities and our states, nations, and international, which then has an effect on us. One of the great reflections that surely everyone is seeing out of this whole COVID experience is that COVID pops up and it affects everything on the planet in a dramatic short amount of time. Like if that's not a sign to every single person on this planet that we're all fundamentally connected in so many different ways, then I don't know what's going to wake people up to that idea, that concept. So look, I feel that we can do a much better job at this leadership thing. I certainly don't feel as if I've got all the answers. Nowhere near it. I feel as if we're kind of still figuring it out, and also how that could actually look like now and also into the future, and how we can even possibly help a student to enter into a journey of learning where they can not just learn about leadership or the theory of, but actually go through a transformational process and become this leader. So when they've completed our program, they've become this leader that's not just they're thinking and planning for the well-being of all concerned. They're not just focused on the bottom dollar. Of course, money is a small aspect to be able to pay for the projects. Like I'm certainly not saying that that is not important. Of course it's important, but it's only one factor from my perspective.
It's a really important point, that. It's a really important point. I mean, we don't get anywhere by swinging from one side all the way out to the other side and actually going from everything being about the money to actually money being, it's like, no, listen, it's a part of it. If you're going to have a sustainable initiative, it doesn't matter what you call it or how it is. If something's going to be sustainable, it has to have a financial health to it as well.
Yeah, but not be the primary driver. It's funny, again, no judgment on money at all. I feel that money is a wonderful currency of trade.
Yeah.
It's a fantastic currency of trade.
Yeah.
However, we've got this large focus on accumulating so much money, and by accumulating a lot of money, it's going to bring us happiness. But of course, we all fundamentally know that that's not the case.
Yeah.
You know, we know that that's not the case. However, we're still pretty addicted to that as a human species. And you know, one of the things that I've been so fortunate with in this life is, you know, I've experienced a lot. You know, I've been giving life a real crack, and you know, one of my businesses that I set up back in 2005, you know, it was a training business, and I'd been in, you know, sort of leadership roles before, and you know, management roles, and but when you go and work for yourself and you've got no partners and nothing, you got to set it all up yourself. And I learned a lot about myself, and then I started to employ, you know, a small team and start off with a few people. And you know, I started off with these ideals of how the culture would be. You know, like I had worked in some big corporate organizations where the culture was just terrible. So I'd experienced the on the low spectrum of health and well-being, what unhealthiness looks like in a culture.
Yeah.
So I was, well, I don't want that in my own business. What would I love to experience as a culture in an organization? So culture was kind of a big thing for me when I started out, and I put a lot of time and effort and thought and feeling into that. But man, I got so much wrong. You know, like I made a lot of mistakes. I made mistake after mistake after mistake, and I guess I was fortunate enough to have some pretty strong and healthy relationships with, you know, for most of the people that worked for me, and our suppliers and our clients, and where, you know, so I was able to stay, you know, keep my doors open. You know, our services were always pretty good, but I just kept on making so many mistakes, and I guess the wonderful thing about you know, being a director of your own business, particularly if you're, you know, you don't have any business partners, that you can make as many mistakes as you want, and you've only got to deal with yourself. You don't have to deal with anyone else.
You're not going to fly yourself, are you?
So and I knew that, and like I really got to appreciate that. But I also purposely got to experiment a lot, you know, with what I felt.
Yeah.
Well, what is a more ideal way than what I was doing it at any given time? And you know, I hadn't gone through leadership training or school or, you know, business school or anything like that, you know. So I was kind of just you know, winging it, and you know, based on what I thought and felt was going to be most appropriate and helpful and so forth. And but I had a strong focus on culture, and I really loved the whole culture thing. And I feel that one of the things that I enjoyed most in that role was, you know, walking into the door each morning. You know, my staff were always there before me. It's just the way that it was. And, you know, walking around, and, you know, at one stage, you know, we, you know, employed up to 100 people, and, you know, so entering into the door and every single morning, you know, looking each one in the eye and saying good morning and hello and how are you, and somebody'd engage into a conversation. You know, it would take me, you know, 5-10 minutes at least to get to from the front door to get to my desk. And but I did that purposely because I wanted to, and I loved it. I really enjoyed that engagement first thing of a morning. But I also saw that people really loved that. People were engaging, and they felt valued, and
The connection,
because I
isn't
did,
it?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, those real simple, basic things of, those simple, basic things where people get a warm and fuzzy, or they feel valued, or they feel safe or secure, or they feel like as if they've got something, with their manager or leader, or in my case, my position. And that taught me an enormous amount. That really taught me a lot about leadership, those real small, basic things of engaging with people, not because theoretically you should,
Yeah.
but because innately you want to.
I read a leadership book and it said I should, so I did.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
People just see through that. They just see through it. It's like,
Like,
oh no, they're
yeah.
being fake, or they're being inauthentic, or whatever. And
Yeah.
and I loved that. I loved like really, I felt that my role, like, as the CEO of that actual business,
Yeah.
my job at the end of the day was to champion the culture,
Yeah. Yeah.
was to lead by example. And so that's where my leadership, I feel, was really developed, was helping people to be able to really come into alignment with where the company was at that time, and where the company was going, where we were going, and what we were working towards, in our community, and, our state, and across the country, helping the clients that we were serving. That was primarily my job, was to lead the culture and help everyone to know that they're a critically important aspect of that culture.
Yeah.
Yeah. I couldn't do it by myself. I was just one bloke.
Yeah. Exactly.
But together as a whole, we formed this amazing team. And it's so interesting. It's so interesting. There was a whole bunch of people at different times over the years in that business, 14 years. People would come in where they weren't used to the type of culture that we had developed, and they were used to more of this hierarchical perspective of, you do as I say, otherwise you're out the door.
Yeah.
Whereas what we had developed was what I call a flat structure.
Yep.
So, yes, we had a role and responsibility of, sort of structure in terms of in the context of a hierarchical structure, but culturally, and as how we operated, it was more of a flat culture. And what that really meant to me, and those that really got it, was no one is valued more than anyone else. No one's valued more than anyone else. I don't value myself any more than anyone else, because the company can't achieve anything more, can't achieve what it needs to achieve if I value myself more than anyone else, or if someone else values himself more than anyone else. So when people really got that, it was like, fireworks had gone off in their heart and their head, really. And
it's really nice.
And then I go back to what I was saying. I employed a bunch of people that would come in with, that sort of more traditional hierarchical perspective, and they would come in and they would start calling me boss.
Yeah.
I'm like, no. Don't call me boss. I know you're coming from this really kind, jovial perspective, but just call me Nathan.
Yeah.
Value me like I value you. we've both got roles in this, and we've both got a responsibility to make this, to serve our clients, and we serve it in both different ways. But I'm no more valuable than you are.
Yeah.
And I'm no more valuable than the cleaner that comes into the office each day and does an amazing job at keeping our desks and everything clean and tidy and so forth. It's an ecosystem of everyone working together towards common outcomes. And like I was saying, when people really got that, it was just self-affirming that what we were doing was really something magical. And again, that taught me so much about leadership.
Wonderful.
Not just because I enjoyed working in that environment, because of the feedback and what other people were telling me, how they loved it. And
Yeah.
there were definitely some that they had just been working too long in that traditional model. They would come in and they would say, yeah, I want to be a part of that. That sounds great. But their programming just wouldn't, they couldn't grasp it. They were trying to do this, infectious, inserting a disease almost type of thing into the culture. And, when those people would come in, everyone would be like, what's wrong with this? What's up with them? So, sometimes people just weren't able to, embrace what we were, the difference. And so they wouldn't last very long. And that was okay. But again, what wonderful learning, well, amazing learning for us. Again, huge learning, what that taught me about leadership. And so anyway, I look, going back, I know that this is kind of a bit of a long-winded sharing, but I feel that we can do better. And I feel very grateful and fortunate enough to have had a whole lot of amazing and wonderful people in my life that have been on this journey with me, that have experienced and learnt and grown themselves, and also has taught me a lot of things about leadership and have been patient with me in learning about leadership. And look, I feel that fundamentally between yourself and myself, we've got something pretty wonderful to be able to share with the world. And that's going to be beneficial to those that are looking for something that's going to serve the world and the community and their, whatever they're engaged in, in a healthier way. That's more about the health and well-being of all concerned. And
and so one of the many things I love about what you shared then is that there is a romantic ideal in there about, hey, listen, don't go work for a big company, work for yourself, start your own business up, be your own boss type thing. And there's the romantic ideal side of that, and then there's the actual reality of it.
They're
which
very
you've
different.
lived, and I'm really excited by that when ones are going to be working with us and they're going to be launching their own initiatives or working in one of ours, when they hit that point where they actually go, hang on a minute, this is not flowing as we all expected, and this is, I've hit some roadblocks, is just to have you be able to stand there, I get you. Absolutely. It's a fantastic experience that you've had of moving through that romantic ideal into, hey, this is actually what it's like. And here's how it is, some of the struggles that you're going to have to go through and some of the growth that you're going to have to go through as well. And, I just love what you've shared about that champion of culture. One of the things that was left with me, one of the other classes at uni, when we were talking about strategy, and all of a sudden the professor just actually stands there and says, there's so many strategic decisions that are made in the heat of the battle, because you never even got a chance to actually think about that beforehand. So you're actually in the middle of a battle, and you've just made a strategic decision, and you probably actually didn't know at that point that was a strategic decision, but it was made, and it's actually put you on another path and all of that. And it just brings that back to this thing that we can't dictate and we can't program the reactions and the decisions and the choices that everybody that's going to be working with is going to make on a day by day basis. The only thing that we can do, and I suppose this is what happens when you get to a bigger number of people that you've got, that you're leading, is that the only thing that you can do is help them build the culture, so that as they connect in with that culture and they're in the point of making a decision, and it's almost like second nature to them, is that they're so entrenched in the culture, they so understand what the purpose of the initiative is and all of that, they can feel all of that and they can go, oh, well, this is the choice I'll make. And it's about the only way that we can actually influence them. So I love the way that you shared that, because it fits in so well with a lot of those challenges and a lot of those understandings of how do you actually have a team working for you and actually all pull together in the same direction. So a lot in there. Thanks, mate. That was really good. I enjoyed it.
I had, some people might sort of roll their eyebrows at what I'm about to share, but it's part of my story. It's part of my journey. And
get eyebrows ready, everybody.
Yeah. When I was before I started that particular business, I was just reflecting on life, because I was really interested in life, and I was probably meditating or just journaling or something, and I just received this sort of deep feeling and knowing, and I'd been working in education training for a couple of years by this stage. So, and this feeling was go and start a college where you get to help develop people's souls. And I was like, I don't know how to do that.
Yeah.
But you know what? I'll go start a college, and I'll start with something that I do know.
Yeah.
And I'll learn.
Yeah.
I'll learn about the soul part, whatever that is. At that time I was a bit like, yeah, I know we've got a soul and this spiritual aspect of us, but I was in my mid to late 20s at this stage. And so anyway, a lot of that was kind of a little bit sort of like, I don't know. So I started this business that I was talking about, and I don't feel as if we trained and qualified over 20,000 people over 14 years, but I don't fundamentally feel that we ever really helped anyone purposely, at least, to make fundamental shifts at soul level within themselves. Yeah. There could have been some people that got a lot out of it and did something for it that I'm not aware of, but I don't feel as if it was a conscious kind of effort on our behalf. However, going back to our culture conversation, one of the wonderful things I just love about culture is that you're helping your own team to experience and to learn and to grow, and that becomes a big part of your focus of fundamentally helping people to be able to move from point A to point B, and then go from point B to point C. And some people will go to point B and just want to stay at point B because that's where they were within themselves. However, over that 14-year period, there was some that, okay, now we're going to go to point B, and they'll go there, and then they'll go to the next one, and I'd go to the next one, and I'd go to the next one, and they just kept on going, and that was just such an amazing, wonderful experience for myself as a leader to experience with someone else, to participate, not to take credit for that, because that's you can't. They did the work. All I did was open up doors and avenues and gave them the best possible people, whether it be myself or someone else. Quite often it was someone else, to help them to be able to take that next step and to go through that learning journey. And culturally, when you've got a bunch of people that are stepping forward together and supporting each other, and oh man, that was kind of a real massive highlight for me, really, in learning about leadership, empowering those in your team to head in the same direction, towards alignment, towards whatever the project or the business or the organization is serving, is working towards. Man, that is kind of like an amazing way to experience not just a workplace or a project, but life, really. That was it didn't become, it wasn't hard work. There was a lot of work being done, but it was because we wanted to. We had a lot of care factor for each other, and that was huge learning for me. Just caring so much about others that they would then move in their own growth, and then they would bring that growth towards whatever you're working towards. And I feel that fundamentally, that even though that as a business we weren't helping people to grow consciously at soul level in our services, I feel that kind of that there was some shifts there within the culture that we'd developed, because people were making movements and having growth within themselves, within the team that I was a part of. Again, they did the work. I was just participating.
Exactly.
Yeah. So culture, I love culture. I love it.
Wonderful.
Yeah. Anyway, I'll stop rabbiting on now because I could keep going.
No, that's really good. If anything, what I've got out of our conversation today is, man, there's so many more conversations we can have.
Yeah.
There's so much more that we can bounce around. I think that'd be really fun. Yeah, really fun to play with some of these sorts of things.
Yeah. Nice.
Cool. Feels like we're done.
That's good fun.
Yeah, that feels like we're done.